An apostle of peace and nonviolence. So Martin Luther King Jr. described Thich Nhat Hanh when he nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Born Nguyen Xuan Bao in 1926 in the ancient imperial city of Hue, Vietnam, he took on the name of Thich Nhat Hanh in 1951 after fully committing to the monastic path. By his mid-20s, Thich Nhat Hanh had already authored several books, established a temple, and earned acclaim for his reformist vision of Buddhism, calling for its engagement in the nation's political life. During this period, Vietnam was ravaged by an 8-year war between France and the nationalist Viet Minh, who fought to end colonial rule. As bullets shattered the walls of his Hue temple, he witnessed French soldiers raiding Buddhist sanctuaries, hunting for resistance fighters or food, and seizing the last of their rice. Monks were killed even though they were unarmed. Thich Nhat Hanh reflected that the spirit of poetic inspiration, the heart of spirituality, and the mind of love could not be extinguished by death. In response to the war's devastation, he founded the Engaged Buddhism movement to address conflict, social injustice, and oppression. Considered too radical by conservative Buddhists, he and his followers established Phuong Boi, the fragrant palm leaves hermitage in the Vietnamese highlands, which he saw as his true spiritual home until his passing. In 1960, the South Vietnamese government agents raided Phuong Boi, forcing him to seek refuge at Princeton University. There he would spend 3 transformative years in America, experiencing a profound spiritual awakening in Columbia University's library. One day, while browsing the library, he stumbled upon a book that had been borrowed only twice before, once in 1915 and again in 1932. Feeling a compelling urge to become the third borrower, he wondered about the previous readers, but they had long vanished, just as he would eventually. This encounter led him to a profound experience of emptiness, which he described in his journal. Everything that is considered to be me will disintegrate. Then what is actually there will reveal itself. Like the grasshopper, I had no thoughts of the divine. While Vietnam was being shaken by violence and Buddhist monks were self-immolating in protest, Thich Nhat Hanh emerged as a prominent voice in the anti-war movement in the United States. He undertook a highly publicized 5-day fast and reported human rights violations in South Vietnam to the United Nations. In 1963, he returned to Vietnam, where he founded schools and contributed to various journals. During a severe flood that devastated South Vietnam and caused immense suffering, he cut his finger and let his blood fall into the river, saying, "This is to pray for all who have perished in the war and in the flood." Believing that addressing the persistent war in Vietnam required speaking to people in America, Thich Nhat Hanh left his country expecting to be away for just a couple of weeks. Little did he know, this journey would extend into a 40-year exile. He sought asylum in France, where he worked to expand Buddhism and assist those fleeing the war in Vietnam. There he found Plum Village, which became his primary residence, the heart of his global community and the largest and most active Buddhist monastery in the West. In 2005, after extensive negotiations with the communist regime, he was allowed to return to Vietnam. During his visits, he taught and established Buddhist centers and monasteries. However, he once again encountered resistance from the government, which made efforts to dismantle his work. In November 2014, Thich Nhat Hanh suffered a severe brain hemorrhage and was hospitalized in France. By November 2018, at the age of 92, he returned to Vietnam to spend his final days at Tur Hue Temple. He passed away there on January 22, 2022, at the age of 95 due to complications from his earlier stroke. Today, Thich Nhat Hanh is celebrated as one of the world's most influential spiritual teachers. His more than 100 books on Dharma and Buddhist teachings have touched the lives of millions globally. As a leading voice of Buddhism in the West, his work applied Buddhist philosophy to a wide range of issues, including relationships, politics, community, environmentalism, policing, and international affairs. But of all his teachings, the most universally known is probably mindfulness. Although this practice has become widely recognized in the West, particularly in recent years, not everyone knows that mindfulness was actually popularized by Thich Nhat Hanh in the early 1970s. In fact, he is often regarded as the father of mindfulness. Affectionately known as The by his students and followers, Thich Nhat Hanh introduced mindfulness as a simple practice that not only fosters communion and mutual understanding, but also helps us recognize that the conditions necessary for happiness are already present in our lives, in every moment of our daily existence. As he expressed, the practice of mindfulness can help us bring peace, joy, and release both to ourselves and to our family and friends as well. Those who practice mindful living will inevitably transform themselves and their way of life. They will live a more simple life and will have more time to enjoy themselves, their friends, and their natural environment. They will have more time to offer joy to others and to alleviate their suffering. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches us that we often find ourselves caught in a spinning wheel of fears, worries, regrets, and anger. A wheel that sometimes seems to never stop. This is much like the wheel of samsara. As a result, we lose sight of the feeling of being present, of living in the present moment. This state, which he calls forgetfulness, is the opposite of mindfulness, the art of truly being present. By breathing in and out mindfully, we bring our minds back to our bodies. We bring our minds back to our bodies and become conscious of our presence in the here and now. Only in that moment can we recognize all the conditions of happiness that surround us, and happiness just comes naturally. When we practice mindfulness, we not only become conscious of our breathing and thus of the present moment, but we also stop talking, both externally and internally. True silence involves setting limits on our mental discourse, the very discourse that often impedes us from seeing the world without judgment or fear. If we allow it, this silence can become a very powerful source of healing and nourishment for our soul. If we breathe in and out and reach a state where our thoughts no longer control us, even if only for a few minutes, we can also attain true concentration. But what does it mean to be concentrated? It's not just about thinking through complex mathematical formulas or trying to recall historical facts. Rather, it's as simple as being aware of a flower, a sunset, or a cloud. As he teaches, if you meditate on a cloud, you can get insight into the nature of the cloud. Or you can meditate on a pebble, and if you have enough mindfulness and concentration, you can see into the nature of the pebble. You can meditate on a person, and if you have enough mindfulness and concentration, you can make a breakthrough and understand the nature of that person. You can meditate on yourself, or your anger, or your fear, or your joy, or your peace. These teachings on mindfulness bring us the essence of the Buddha's wisdom, particularly his insights into the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, a path that guides us towards healing, transformation, and happiness for both ourselves and the world. He developed a system called the 5 mindfulness trainings based on these teachings, which he adapted for contemporary life. When we live according to the 5 mindfulness trainings, we are already on the path to becoming a bodhisattva, a being dedicated to attaining enlightenment, not only for ourselves, but for the benefit of all sentient beings. Rather than establishing rigid rules, these teachings offer a path to cultivate and develop actions of body, speech, and mind. They are indeed one of the most tangible ways to practice mindfulness. The first training, which he calls Reverence for Life, sets forth a path to protect life and cease violence towards ourselves and others. It fosters the intention to cultivate the insight of interbeing and compassion, teaching us that all forms of existence, whether people, animals, plants or minerals, deserve reverence and respect. It acknowledges that harmful action stems from anger, fear, greed and intolerance. These emotions lead us to view the world in a dualistic way, perceiving ourselves as separate from others. However, as we follow this path, we come to understand that any harm we inflict on others, whether human beings or not, is ultimately harm we inflict on ourselves and vice versa. True happiness, the second training, guides us to practice generosity in our thinking, speaking, and acting. It helps us recognize that the happiness and suffering of others are intertwined with our own, and that true happiness arises only through understanding and compassion. Chasing fame, power, and other pleasures can lead to despair and suffering. A quote from Thay's teachings can serve as a mantra for achieving true happiness. I am aware that happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have more than enough conditions to be happy. The third training, True Love, teaches that sexual misconduct can often lead to suffering. It emphasizes the importance of committing to responsibility and finding ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. It guides us to recognize that sexual desire is not the same as love, and that sexual activity, driven by craving, ultimately harms both ourselves and others. Through an awareness of the interrelation between body and mind, we are guided to manage our sexual energy wisely and to cultivate the 4 essential elements of true love: loving, kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, for the greater happiness of ourselves and others. Loving speech and deep listening, the fourth training, represents a commitment to alleviating suffering and promoting reconciliation and peace within ourselves and among others, whether individuals, ethnic and religious groups, or nations. It teaches the importance of being mindful of our words, as they can either create happiness or cause suffering. It also establishes a commitment to refrain from speaking when anger arises within us, and it demonstrates that mindful breathing and walking can be powerful tools for preventing speech driven by anger. Lastly, nourishment and healing, the fifth training, leads us to practice mindful eating, drinking, and consuming, revealing the profound importance of nurturing both our physical and mental well-being. This nourishment extends beyond food to include everything we consume: television, drugs, alcohol, electronic games, magazines, books, and conversations. Each of these can become a source of harm, especially when we turn to them in search of solace from loneliness, anxiety, or other forms of suffering. Thay teaches us that by practicing concentration and mindfulness in the present moment, we can connect with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements both within us and around us. As can be seen, the 5 mindfulness trainings should not be regarded as separate steps or isolated elements. On the contrary, they are deeply interconnected, each contributing to the practice of mindfulness in our daily lives. Through our words, actions, the love we offer others, our relationship with the planet, and the care we give to ourselves. Thich Nhat Hanh explained that mindfulness protects us, our families, and our society. When we are mindful, we can see that by refraining from one action, we can prevent another from occurring. We arrive at our own unique insight. It is not something imposed on us by an outside authority. Therefore, mindfulness is a path to which we must fully commit ourselves, driven by a sincere desire. No one can achieve it for us. It depends entirely on our own efforts. As we mentioned earlier, Thich Nhat Hanh published over 100 books on Buddhist teachings for the modern world and contemporary society, covering a wide range of subjects. While it would be impossible to encompass everything he taught here, now that we grasp the true meaning of mindfulness and being present, we will adapt these teachings into a concrete and simple practice: walking meditation. Walking meditation unites our body and our mind. We combine our breathing with our steps. When we breathe in, we may take 2 or 3 steps. When we breathe out, we may take 3, 4, or 5 steps. As we walk, we can say, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I bring peace into my body. Calming the breath calms the body and reduces any pain and tension. Buddhism teaches that meditation is about fully awakening to the present moment. In walking meditation, we become aware of the earth's ability to nourish and heal us, grounding ourselves in her generosity and feeling a deep sense of gratitude. By walking with reverence and recognizing our connection to the earth, we experience her qualities of patience, stability, creativity, love, and non-discrimination. Each step helps us fully arrive in the present moment. Let's conclude this video with the walking meditation poem by Thich Nhat Hanh. I take refuge in Mother Earth. Every breath, every step manifests our love. Every breath brings happiness. Every step brings happiness. I see the whole cosmos in the earth.